Hey everyone, welcome to the Fireside Chat number 15 on Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander and I'm so happy you're joining us for this chat. Today, Eileen and I talked money with Jonathan Fink, professional freelance cellist and successful real estate agent in the Philadelphia area. John shared how his approach and relationship with money has changed ever since evolving his career to include real estate, and we dove into what you can do to change the way you think about money. This was a great chat. Let's get started. Hey John, hey Eileen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Great. Awesome. So today we have a friend named Jonathan Fink. He is a cellist. And John, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Okay. My name's Jonathan Fink. I am a residential realtor with Keller Williams Center City in Philadelphia and a professional cellist. I went to school in the 80s in Philadelphia at the University of the Arts, and I play in Harrisburg Symphony and the Philly Pops and do a fair amount of freelancing around the Philadelphia area.
Cool. And so I know you're a freelancer cellist, but you're also a successful realtor, correct?
It's true, I am.
Yeah. So what made you decide to go into real estate initially?
Initially, I was buying an investment property for myself around 2006. This was something that my wife and I had always wanted to do, and we did that in our neighborhood. I ended up taking on a partner, a friend of mine. We ended up buying two more kind of right away, and I found the process really interesting. We already owned our own home. We had purchased a home in the mid '90s. Just barely by the hair of our chin, did we managed to do it. And I was interested in the process that we were going through purchasing these properties. And so I noticed that they were having these classes at Temple University downtown for real estate. And honestly, I didn't quite realize they were the licensing courses, but I just thought, well, you know what, I'll just sign up and take these. And I realized as I was doing it, I was like, oh, this is the licensing classes. I get it. And so then I was like, well, I took the classes. I might as well, take the tests. And then
Right.
kind of one thing, honestly, I really didn't have big plans. I've always had kind of extra jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing, kind of part-timey real estate at a small firm here in Philadelphia called Miles and Generalis. And in 2010, I started to really focus on it more, and about the same time, I had kind of a realization that I knew a lot of people in the area, and mostly through the music business,
Mm-hmm.
and that for at least for some part of it, I had good relationships with them. I mean, not all of them, but and that that I could help these people purchase and sell real estate, and that and over the years, it's kind of grown. The success became a little bit addictive. I really enjoy being successful, and it's kind of taken off from there.
That's great. So it sounds to me like your philosophy on money has changed maybe over the years. So I want to know how it has evolved or where did it come from initially when you were a cellist not doing real estate?
Well, I think that that's such an incredibly loaded question, but yes, my philosophy about money has absolutely changed, and I unabashedly like to have money now. I work hard and I make a fair amount of money, and I like being able to do things with it. Some of them for myself, some of them for other people. I love being able to provide. And this sounds goofy, but I love being able to provide for my family kind of above and beyond just getting by. You know what I mean? I kind of hate terms like that. We can't afford it. Like these are things I try to never say. In my mind, you can choose to buy something or invest in something, or you can choose not to. But I don't like the term "I can't afford" or we can't do that, or, if only we had more money, would we be able to blah, blah. I think I've worked so hard to get away from all of that kind of negative thinking. And it's a struggle for me. I don't want to say like, oh, it's so easy.
Right.
A lot of that stuff was kind of ingrained in me. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. We had what we needed, but, we couldn't afford to buy me a really nice cello when I was a kid, and, this and that. And I think maybe I ingrained some of that in myself. And so I worked very hard, and I think I'd like to give Keller Williams, the education stuff at Keller Williams, a lot of credit for this. They helped me see that, and I think maybe this is the part that's valuable. This stuff is a choice. You can stop thinking like that if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I mean, people get what they need out of, being the air quotes poor musician, thing, or and it's not just musicians, it's all kinds of people. And I was certainly like that.
Yeah.
And took even some pride in it, like, hey man, I remember saying, like, I get all my money comes from playing music. And I thought that was, for me, that was kind of a point of pride. I don't have any other side jobs or anything. But I guess what happened was, I wasn't making enough money doing that to accomplish the things in my life that I wanted to accomplish. And on top of that, and this is just me, it turned out to be not that satisfying to be not making that much money.
Right. Yeah.
Not only was I not making that much money, but I wasn't really all that happy not making that much money.
Right. You can say, oh, I make all my money from gigs. But then if you're looking at that, how much it is, you're like, okay, is that anything to be proud of anymore? I don't know.
And I think that for some people, and I've thought a lot about this over the last few days since, I know we're going to do this, but there are people out there, and I can think of some examples who really are happy doing what they're doing, and not, maybe they don't make as much money as me, but they love to pick up their instruments and play their instrument. They love to teach. They love to do whatever it is that they do. And however much money they make doing that is, some people it's a lot, some people it's not a lot, was enough for them. I mean, right. I'm not the world's most talented musician. I mean, there are, way more talented musicians than me. And I didn't know, and I think this is, for young people, I think this makes sense to learn at an early age, because it's absolutely true. If you give a crap about making some money and you want to stay in the music business, just playing your instrument is probably not going to be the path to riches.
Right.
The people that I know who are super successful freelancers are the ones who play really well, arrange, publish, contract, and are involved in education in a high level.
Yep.
And those things, the performance needs, your ability to play your instrument needs to be a platform upon which you can build this other stuff.
Totally.
And I got to be honest with you, I never knew that. Nobody told me that. I didn't realize it. And part of my problem is I don't really love playing the cello that much. And I can say that out loud now. 10 years ago, I might have had a hard time saying it. But the truth is, I don't wake up in the morning and just want to take my cello out and play it all day. I don't. I mean, and if you do, hey, good for you. And that's all you need in your life. I know people like that. And I'm not sure I envy them, but it works for them. But that's not me. I'm not interested in that. There were always other things I wanted to do. And I'm grateful that I found something that I love doing as well as playing the cello that has allowed me to make some money and support my family. And I still get to play. I get to play about the amount that I like. It's
right, which I love. You kept it as an option for yourself at the level that you wanted to do it at, which I really like. And what you're saying is totally spot on, because if there are people out there who live and die to play their instrument every minute of the day, yeah. But if you desire to have if you desire to make money, if money is important to you, I completely agree with you that it has to be made in more ways than just playing. It's just a fact, really.
It really is. I mean, when the very top of our profession, the top 5 orchestras, if all you do is play and you're a rank and file string member in a top 5 orchestra, what are you starting at? I don't know. Even the highest one is what, 130, 140? And
Yeah.
and to and I can hear the chorus of musicians going, "Well, that sounds good to me." I get it. That's a lot of money for a musician.
For a
But
musician, I think is the important for a musician, right?
But compared to the rest of the world,
Yep.
$100,000, $125,000 is, I'm sorry to say it, it's just not that big a deal.
Right, and it's pre-tax, keep in mind. So
Pre-tax.
take out the big city taxes because those jobs are in big cities. So they usually have higher taxes, higher cost of living, higher everything, longer commutes. So you subtract all those expenses for living in those places and you're getting, closer to just over 6 figures, maybe 100-something thousand, but not too much higher after taxes and all those fees and everything. And then on top of that, if you end up having a family, if you're just a single person supporting yourself on that salary, well then, yeah,
you're fine. Right.
That could be a little easier.
If you're raising a family in a big city on a salary of $115,000 a year, I'm sorry, you're doing okay, but you're not, that's not luxury living. Now, look, if you're thrilled and that's great, and you're, and remember, this is for the top. I don't even think we're talking about the top 5% of our industry. We're talking about the top 0.5%.
Yep.
I mean, I work with, I've worked with my share of Philadelphia Orchestra musicians. These are the top musicians in the world.
Yep.
That's how come they won those jobs. And frankly, I think they deserve to make a whole lot more money than they do. But the fact is, that's what they earn. And everybody else in the orchestral world is based on that,
Yeah, and it's almost like, in my opinion, the level of competition does not outweigh or like balance the amount of money you're competing for. If you're just looking at it as like a job that you're going to be paid a certain salary, like the level of competition for that is crazy.
It's like insane, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier to get into the Olympics on some esoteric sport that you've never heard of than it is to get into the Philadelphia Orchestra. I mean, you have to be the very best of the very best of the very best to have that job.
Come on, you got to think of a good example of that esoteric sport. Like I'm thinking of that one where they have to push like a ball over ice and like sweep around it.
Yeah, right. Like it's like the Jamaican bobsled team. It's easy to get on that team because bobsledding is not a big deal in Jamaica. So if you have a bobsled and 3 guys who can do it, you win. You're in, right? So honestly, it would be easier to move to Jamaica and become a citizen there and get on the bobsled than it would be to get it into the Philadelphia Orchestra. And hey, kudos to the people that did. And I'm an admitted Philly-O wannabe. I mean, I have absolutely the utmost respect for these people.
Yeah.
But guess what? Not everybody can be the world's best.
Yeah.
It's just and the idea that if you're not, you should just suffer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You should, unless you can win that Big 5 job and make kind of enough money to live, the rest of us should just, this is how it always kind of felt to me. I don't want to project. I want to be very careful during this thing to not kind of project my own bullshit onto other people. 'Cause I totally get that it's my own bullshit. But to me, it always felt like if you can't do that, if you can't play in the Philadelphia Orchestra, everything else is kind of, well, whatever. You're in.
At least you have a gig. Like I heard that so much.
Oh yeah, that's always. Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Oh my God.
$6 a service, and what else do you do?
It's better than digging ditches, man.
Yeah, right. What's interesting is I knew a guy in Philly Orchestra who would come up to him and people would come up to him and say, is this a full-time job? So it works both ways. Like they don't get respect necessarily from the real world either.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of a whole nother thing. So at any rate, I just found that as I was freelancing, and look, I wasn't even the most successful freelancer. There's plenty of people in Philly working more than me, but I worked, and it was a lot of it I was finding didn't make me happy. And even worse, I let it make me kind of angry and pissed off,
Yeah.
And I couldn't stay positive, and again, this is all my own bullshit. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault that I was angry, but the idea that I couldn't support my new family by playing the cello. Here, I'd spent my whole life learning how to do this, and maybe I wasn't the world's best, but I'm not the worst cellist in the world. I mean, I think I'm probably in the top 25% of my field, right? Like if you're in the top 25% of doctors, are you making a living?
Yeah.
Pretty sure you are.
You're making a ton.
And I had a hard time kind of reconciling that. And it turns out that and thank God I found real estate, but it turns out when I found real estate and I found some success in that, two things happened. One thing is I learned to have money and learned to be okay with it and learned to feel good about myself and my ability to earn real money and invest it wisely and understand money better and not kind of hate money and hate people who had it and all that horrible anger shit that I developed over the years. And then surprisingly, this is the surprising part for me, is that I started to appreciate playing music again. Because instead of seething the whole time about how, Jesus Christ, really, we're going to sit here and at the end of the day, I'm going to drive back and, it's going to be $400 and, I spent 150 of it on, booze to numb myself when I got home and, right,
Yep.
Now it's like I go and I enjoy myself. I don't, it's still a struggle for me. Like, here's an exercise I do with myself. Like, I'm very into kind of, being in the moment and all this. I've become the goofiest whack job that there is. So like when I'm in concerts and even rehearsals, I don't know about you guys, but like, I don't like rehearsing. Like I don't get anything out of it. Orchestral rehearsing.
Right.
Like I'm just crawling out of my skin most of the time. Hopefully I'm sure the people I work for are hearing this, but honestly, I feel like it's just like I'm hoping the clock isn't anywhere I can see it, because it's like, oh my God, how much longer are we going to do this? I mean, there are exceptions if you were playing something you really like, but
yeah.
No, the last gig I did, I went into it with a good attitude, because I'm like, I haven't done a gig in a long time. I'm the only horn, because it was a really reduced orchestra, and it was Carmen arranged for ballet, and so I was looking forward to it. It was ballet, and I love watching ballet, and so I get there the first rehearsal, and I'm with you on the friggin' rehearsals, because the first rehearsal we start right at the top, right at the overture, and I'm playing everyone's playing. It's loud. The practice room was not ideal, too small, and it was too loud in there, and everyone was playing all at once, and it sounded like crap, and I was like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Why did I say yes to this gig?
Has anybody noticed that orchestral music is a really noisy work environment?
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mean, it really is. I mean, if you sit on stage before an orchestra rehearsal, before it starts, and the cacophony of that is just, it's mind-numbing, and it's hard. I mean, like my son is mildly autistic, and so I feel like I can say, I think I have a little autism in me, and there's a little part of me that just wants to like crawl under a pillow and just be like, I can't take it, it's just too much,
Stop making that noise.
Stop making all that noise, and then you ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Like, this is insane, But anyway, like I have this exercise that I do now where that my therapist taught me, where it's like, just try to stay in the moment and go, like have some gratitude that you're getting to do this thing that people, people in the audience would, love to be able to do this. And there's a part of me that does still love it. it's a matter of getting there in my head.
Right. And usually at the concert, I'm sure you're really happy you're doing it, and that's what keeps you coming back, because you have that concert. But listen, I think the fact that you have these other sources of income make you, it gives you the freedom to say, I'm not doing that crappy gig that's a 4-hour drive away, or this year, like you mentioned that there was another gig that you turned down once, and and so you have that freedom because you have created those other streams. And I've talked to other people who've done that as well that are musicians, and they, it takes off a lot of stress because you have the freedom to say no to gigs. And the people that are the most angry in the freelance world that I've met are the ones that don't feel like they can turn down those gigs. So they're taking shitty gigs because they're like, ugh, I don't have a choice. I can't afford not to. Like
I can't afford not to, right? Yeah. I have to. And I remember feeling like that. And it's like, it's completely opposite of the kind of, we were all taught, I shouldn't say we, like, so when I was 13, I don't know about you guys, but to me, like, the best year of my life in music was like 11th grade. Like, I was the shit in 11th grade, I'm pretty sure I was on the first stand at All State and, All Northwest and whatever. And, it feels like it was all downhill from there. And I was good and I loved it and I had all my friends. And honestly, the social aspect of it is the part that keeps me coming back. I love the people. People might laugh because people will probably laugh if they're hearing that because I can come off kind of cranky sometimes. But the fact is, I really do enjoy the hang, and there's this, I think using a war analogy is ridiculous, but there's this kind of, we're all in this foxhole together and we're going to, do you know what I mean? Like, did you see that? Did you see that bullet go right by my head? Oh my God. That we all kind of experience these events together, and then we have these stories that we tell.
And sometimes people love to kvetch and whine about how crappy their gigs are together. I could say kvetch to you because you're Jewish,
right?
They like to be like, did you do that shitty gig last week? Oh yeah, so did I, man. It wasn't even worth the money, and I had to drive 3 hours. I knew that was sucked.
Right. But
too bad we can't turn it down.
That zone, it's like you're kind of doing every job. And so this thing that you started out doing that isn't about the money ends up really being about the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the irony, right? Like, we all got into music knowing that it wasn't going to pay a lot of money, but then you don't have any money. So you're taking every whatever job, and maybe you're enjoying them. I don't know. Sometimes there are people who can show up to any job and like have the best attitude. God bless them.
There's a couple of those.
There's a few. I can think of a couple off the top of my head, but I'm not one of them. So there's this weird dichotomy where it's like, oh, it's not really about the money. I don't do this for the money, and yet every gig is, we have to stop right on the dime of 3 o'clock because otherwise they're going to have to pay us another $6. Right? And how vested do you get in, like, oh, it's going to go overtime, you're going to make another $14,
That does happen. Oh my God.
Like, who cares? It's
no,
meaningless.
This is the worst. I got to tell you this. People in our orchestra, they will take the bus, even though it takes an extra hour and a half because they stop for dinner, so they can get their per diem.
Right. There you go.
Oh my God. Are you freaking serious right now?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't know. I think everyone gets a per diem, even if you don't take the bus. But one time,
Usually
many
if you
people
take the bus, you don't get a per diem because then you've turned the task of transportation over to the orchestra. I always thought it was the opposite. People drive so they can, like, I remember in the old days of Harrisburg Symphony, before we would get a hotel, they would give you mileage. It was like they would give you mileage if you drove every day, but if you stayed in the hotel, they wouldn't give you mileage. That's what it was. And so people would go and decline the hotel and then stay like 5 people in a room at the Super 8. so that you can collect the mileage and, oh my God,
Are you serious?
Oh my God. I
and
know. And I talked to this
people
old
who
timer
park on the
once.
street, lots of people who park on the street in downtown Philadelphia, and I love you, God bless you, and if any of you are listening, I don't. I park in a lot because I figure I'm going to work and I want to pay a little bit of money to park in a lot, and I don't want to walk, 6 blocks and find a free parking spot. But to some people, I think there's kind of a game that they play of finding that spot too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, everybody's different. Everybody has different attitudes about it, and like I keep saying, like if it's working for you, great.
John?
It's the ones who it isn't that should think about changing.
So, John, I've got a question. So
Okay.
you obviously definitely getting involved with Keller Williams you said it had a big impact on your, on how you looked at money. Because I've actually heard they have a great training program there. And by the way, this is not an endorsement for anybody to be a real estate agent. It has nothing to do with that. It's, but I think that had a big impact on you. So you just said something about, they packed themselves in, 5 people into a Super 8 just so they could get the per diem. And so that's one mindset. My question is, you've talked before about a concept called the financial thermostat. So if you don't want to be that person anymore, I think that possibly this concept could help somebody become something. If they don't want to be that, how could they not be that? And I think maybe the financial thermostat might be the answer.
Okay, well, so I don't think the financial thermostat is even a Keller Williams invention.
I wasn't thinking that. I was just saying that's what sort of turned your mind around about money, and then you kind of went from there, right?
Right. Yeah. So at KW they have a training. It's really a lead generation training boot camp thing called Bold, which goes 8 weeks every Wednesday, 1 day a week, all day, and a big chunk of it is ways to find new leads for yourself, all this kind of stuff. But there's also a huge mindset component of it. And that's where I was first exposed to some of these kind of positive thinking, change the way you're thinking mindset stuff. And the idea of, affirmations, for example, changing the way you think about yourself and about money to your advantage. And it's something that has been incredibly effective for me. It's goofy, and I had a hard time at first kind of letting go enough to get involved. And honestly, I got to a point where I just got to a breaking point, kind of like I can't not be successful anymore. And in order to be successful, I'm going to have to somehow change the way I think.
Yep.
But the concept of the financial thermostat is that everybody kind of has a baseline amount of money that they're comfortable having. And, you like a thermostat in a house, if you set a thermostat at 70, it'll when the heat comes on, it'll go up to 71 or 72. And then when it goes off, it'll drop down to 68. But it'll always kind of hover around 70. And whatever your financial thermostat is set at is probably what you're going to continue to do unless you make some kind of effort to change it, some kind of real change, some kind of decision. I've been reading a Tony Robbins book, and he says the most powerful skill that you can have is to make decisions.
Yep.
And then have those decisions be followed up by actions. So you have to make a decision. I don't want to live on $30,000. I make more than that. So an affirmation would be like, I earn $200,000 a year. Now, is that true? I mean, if it was true, you wouldn't need an affirmation, right? But you kind of put it out there into the universe by saying it to yourself.
Right.
A famous one from Bold is, I'm a money magnet. Money just comes to me in all kinds of ways. No matter what I do, everything I do, it ends up being profitable. Like to the people in the arts world, it's not about the money, blah, blah, blah. But I think we already established it is, right? It already is about the money.
Right.
So why not, why not at least acknowledge that it's about the money and stop making money evil? That was kind of the big change for me. So I know that one of the exercises we do in Bold, which I think is really interesting, is you get like a ledger, like a checkbook, and anybody can do this. And today you get $2,000. Okay, so you write in the ledger on the plus side $2,000, and then, okay, Eileen, you have to spend that $2,000 on. And what are you going to spend that $2,000 on? And we're assuming that your bills are taken care of, that you don't have, your rent and your bills are taken care of. So spend $2,000 for me. What are you buying?
$2,000.
Yeah. What are you buying?
I'm going to buy probably a 10-pack of massages.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm probably going to buy. A bunch of supplements on Amazon.
Okay. All right, that sounds like $2,000. We're good.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's a whole list I can come up with. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, it's now the next day. You double that. So how much money did you get?
$4,000.
$4,000. Okay, spend it.
So am I spending the $4,000 on new things?
Yes.
New things.
New things. You see, it gets hard quick. This gets hard quicker than you think, and that's kind of the point.
So my $2,000 that I just spent, that's washed away now.
That's gone. That's gone now. But now you have $4,000.
Jesus. Okay. You want me to spend $4,000 right here? Okay.
Tracy, do you see what's happening here?
Yeah.
Like, she can't even do we're on day 2.
Eileen, and you know what? Eileen's minimalist.
Wait till you get to day 16 and it's
right. And Tracy's right. That's the other thing, is that I'm not typically a buyer. I'm very minimalist, and I'm not really typically a buyer. So you're telling me $4,000.
There you go. So that's where your financial thermostat is set. Like, $5,000 is an issue for you. You can't, I mean.
No, but listen. No, I have to interject here because Eileen and I did this one day.
Yeah.
Eileen, you probably remember. And we were talking about what we would do. And we started going into, I could buy some flights to Europe. I could plan some vacations. And then the next day, so that's gone. And then the next, I book all the hotels extravagant as all get out. And then I get the next allotment, which is now what do I have? 16 or no, I have 8.
8.
I'm going to start hiring people to do stuff for me. Like,
I
want my house clean from top to bottom.
Every day.
Every day.
Yep.
Yeah. Like ongoingly, like I want people just hanging out waiting for me to work.
Tracy
and by the way, are you helping somebody when you do that?
Yeah.
Am I helping somebody?
Give somebody a job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tracy came up with the best shit too. I got to tell you, like she was so imaginative about how she was spending her money. And I was like, I need to do some work over here.
I'm telling you, it is a great exercise. And
I was like, someone is going to decorate my house.
But this is what they made me do this. They make everybody do it, and it's a really interesting thing because it doesn't. Everybody's like, oh, this will be easy. I'm going to be spending money, And turns out most people get to 100, 200,000, and it starts to get difficult. Because you're just not wired that way to think about those kinds of amounts. And, so here's the question. Is there any value to that? Is there any value to thinking, hey, if I had this money, what kind of fucking good could I do? I could do some real things for people.
Well, and like Jonathan, I noticed, I saw in your newsletter that you bought new folders for the Harrisburg Symphony. And I thought, now that's cool. Like, that's an example. You took money that you made and you helped out your symphony. So and I'm listening to some other, kind of artist podcasts around this topic. And they were talking about, when you make more money, you can create more great art. So you have more money to put into what you need to create or what you want to create. So I've got 16,000 in the bank and my bills are taken care of and everything's covered. Let's put on a concert and hire an orchestra or whatever.
Exactly. Well, and I think you just said something really important, and that is that if you go through this exercise, and let's say you're a musician, let's say you're a young musician who's just getting out of college and you're on the audition scene and you're not winning, but you're really good and you're entrepreneurial. And you go through this exercise and you get to $16,000 or $20,000 and you go, I could put on my own concert series.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on a second. Do you really need $20,000 to put on your own concert series? Couldn't you put on your own concert series with what you've got right now? Couldn't you create your own opportunities? And suddenly, the two things start to connect. And you're not just dreaming about shit, you're actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and before you know it, you're hiring musicians and you're, you know, and you've got to, you know, I mean, this, you don't have enough jobs? Create your own fucking jobs.
Well, and can I just, you know what? Can I bring this up, Tracy, the thing about the music camp that we were talking about this morning?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to use names. Okay. But there's somebody who's wanting to create a music camp, and, you know, that could be one of any, you know, 300,000 people. So, you know, nobody's going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But anyway, this person is wanting to create a music camp. And so their idea is to, you know, post about it and quote unquote, raise money using, Patreon
or whatever.
in this case, Patreon, because it's a musician. And so, but you know what's funny about that? What really killed me about it is, like, I get that whole thing, but what about, you know, what if you just got, you know, enrolled, say 50 parents or 50 kids or 100 kids or whatever in the idea and had them put down a deposit? Then you got your money. You know, that's what's so funny is that everybody wants to find a way not to, they don't want to sell. They don't want to, you know what I'm saying? It's like a backdoor way, and because everybody thinks you need money to start something. And I just want to back up what you're saying with that example, because I see that all the time. There's probably 1 million people want to start a camp, and they're going, I can't start a camp because I don't have $5,000 or $10,000 to start it. And I'm like, why do you need $5,000 or $10,000 to start it?
Right. I think the idea of things like the financial thermostat is that you start thinking out of your little box where you're going and playing my jobs, and I can't think of anything else, and, you know, I'm going to get to the gas station and buy my Gatorade and my Snickers bar, and then I'm going to drive to the rehearsal, and then I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to have 2 drinks, and then I'm going to go to sleep. And by thinking kind of outside of the box, you start to create these ideas, and then maybe it turns out that the ideas don't really need as much money as it sounds like, or maybe that amount of money isn't as far away as you think it is. Again, I think some of the most impressive people that I know in the music business, and I would love to give some names, but I'm not going to, but people that I know well and love who do everything. They you know, they're great performers, but they also contract, and they do arranging and publishing, and they can record, and they've created stuff for themselves, and they're employing other musicians, and starting music festivals and doing things like that. And I think that, you know, I remember hearing a podcast by one of these guys who said that when he was in college, he didn't have enough performance opportunities, so he literally got 3 other guys and just started playing brass quintets on the corner. You know, and I mean, and that morphed into something that is still involved in today. You know, so get up off your asses. But, you know, that's the hard part, is that I didn't see any of that when I was a kid. I didn't. I just thought, here's what I thought. I have to practice, and if I practice and I get good enough, then everything will be okay,
right there,
and I'll be able to support myself playing music, and everything will be okay. I didn't know anything about social skills. I didn't know how to behave myself. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to sell anything, like myself. I didn't know, you know, and I was really kind of a failure at this, you know. And who's teaching? I don't know who's teaching them these things, but maybe not anybody. I don't know. But anyway,
it's just one of those beliefs, you know, like I think, and the other problem I think is that we all grow up thinking, like what you said, if I practice and I get good enough, I'll be okay, which means someone will give me money to do this.
And Tracy,
right. But we don't even realize when we're 13 that that's something.
Yeah, totally.
We need.
And Tracy, you told that was your life for such a long time. You actually believe that.
Yeah, I just told myself everything would be okay, and eventually I would get a
Yep.
job.
Right. A
So
real
when
job.
a real job,
An air quotes,
Right.
real job.
yeah. And I'm
Right.
not a
Not
real musician or a real person until I get that too.
That's right. And I couldn't think of having a
Yep.
family
Right.
or buying a house or starting,
Mm-hmm.
doing any of these real people things until I get a real
Yep.
job. And
All
so
that
I'll
stuff.
just delay the rest of my life indefinitely,
Yep.
you know.
It keeps you in student mode. I remember I still felt like I was a student when I was 32.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't have money in the bank. I couldn't buy a house if I want. Not that buying a house is the end all be all, but
It's a
I couldn't.
benchmark.
It's a benchmark. There were things that I could never consider doing because I never made more than $30,000 in my life by the time I was age 32.
Right.
And the most money I'm not ashamed to say it, but the most money that I've ever made as a musician at all is around 50. So that,
Well, I got news for you, Tracy. If you're freelancing in the classical world and you're working every weekend,
mm-hmm.
unless you're a soloist or a conductor, that's pretty much how much you can make.
Because there's 52 weeks in a year, and
There's
most
52
orchestras
weeks
are
a year, and the
52
jobs
weeks.
pay what the jobs pay. It's not rocket
Right.
science.
Right.
I mean, you have to either there have to be more weekends or there have to be higher paying jobs. It's not, it's not. Now, look, if you're in Los Angeles and you're doing recordings, or you're in New York and you're on Broadway, those jobs pay more and they have residuals and things like that. It's all different. But again, there are people out there who are successful, but there's a lot of people who are existing on $40,000 and $50,000 a year, and frankly, you probably think that that's a good salary, and for them maybe it is. And again, I really want to make sure I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. Look, if that's your life and you're happy, that's great. I just couldn't make that work. That was my problem. I wasn't happy like that.
Yeah,
I wanted to make more money. I had dreams. Another way you can express some of this stuff that I learned in Keller Williams is something very simple that's certainly not Keller Williams-y, but a vision board, where you put stuff up on the wall and kind of declare to yourself in the world, hey, this is something I'd like to do or have.
Right. So yeah, you mentioned that you use that for because you own an airplane.
Right, I own an airplane. I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying that. And it was. I mean, I've been flying for years and years and years, but to own my own airplane has been a dream of mine since I was a kid. I mean, my mom is in town right now, and she's 70 something, and I took her for a ride, and she said, "I can remember, you've been dreaming of this your whole life." And really, 7 years ago, it seemed like I would put an airplane on my vision board every year, but it was kind of like, I put an airplane on the vision board, but that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. You know what I mean? And suddenly, here I am, and not only do I have an airplane, but I'm using it for business. It's part of my financial plan. Nobody's even, my accountant's not even laughing at me. And what a great joy, and it's like a dream come true. It's amazing. And I mean, I can't even express to you that it's kind of a symptom of where I've gotten, and not just in terms of how much money I've made, but where I've gotten in my own acceptance of this stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Absolutely, it makes sense. Yeah. And this goes kind of into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is because of the sales and the work that you've done in real estate really created, the opportunity for you to be able to afford that. So I know in previous conversations, you've said that you think sales is so important to every single career. And I want you to expand on that a little bit.
Okay. Well, the idea is that I think Gary Keller actually says in one of his books, I think this is where I got this, is that everybody has two jobs, whatever your job is, and sales or lead generation. Well, lead generation is basically sales. In other words, you need to have prospects. Mm-hmm. So if you're a freelance musician, your prospects are, potential contractors, or if you're a contractor, your prospects are churches or orchestras that would hire you to be a contractor. If you're an arranger, then your prospects are composers or lyricists who would need arranging, right? If you're, am I getting it? Like, everybody has a prospect for their business, whatever that is. For my business, it's pretty simple. A prospect is either somebody who wants to sell their house or buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not rocket science, right? If you're just a cellist that's being hired, then your prospects are people who hire cellists. What are you doing? There's passive, are you just passively sitting there? And, I don't know if you guys ever had this experience, but when I was young, I literally would pick up the phone, back when we had phones, and I would check to see if the dial tone was still working. Is it broken? So I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the world to call me. Waiting to call for a job. I'm waiting for a contractor to call me. And honestly, in the music world, do people call contractors and go, "Hey man, I just want to let you know I'm in town. I'm really good, and I'd love to work for you"? Does that happen? I don't think that happens.
I don't think people usually do that.
I don't think most contractors would appreciate it, frankly.
Right.
There's this kind of you can't do that kind of stuff mentality in the music business that I was very much affected by. Other businesses, not so much. I mean, when you go to a car dealership,
just hope they find out about you. So
that's so funny to me, because if I was a musician and I wanted work, that's exactly what I would do. I would call a contractor and take him to lunch and say, "Listen, I'm really interested in doing work, and I'd really like to. Can I buy you some lunch? And can I talk about I would do that. I would absolutely do that. I've zero. I don't care what they think of me. I'm going to put them in front of me. That's
right. And would a whole bunch of other people call you an ass kisser? If you did that?
And they can fuck off.
And would they be sitting home not working while you were working?
I promise you I would get the job. I guarantee it, I would get the job.
Fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them.
Right? I wish I had known that. I had no social skills when I was really freelancing. But absolutely. Being sociable, making a connection with the people who could potentially hire you. Now, look, you don't have to call up the contractor and go, "My name's John Fink, and I'm a really good cellist, and I want you to hire me." That's not the way to do it. But you have to make a connection, and there are ways to learn how to do that. And there's and here's the kicker: there's nothing impure or horrible about it.
Yep.
You're still a real musician, even if you did a little prospecting.
Well, and what's funny about this whole thing? I think about chamber groups that are, they're doing community playing, or they're doing, they're maybe hitting up a wedding or two, or they're showing up wherever they can play for free or whatever. And I really feel like they're just sitting there waiting for somebody to come up and go, "Oh my God, you're the greatest thing I've ever seen." I really do think.
Right. Here's your Sony recording contract.
They're literally, the classical musicians are literally waiting to be chosen. And I'm like, why the fuck are you doing that? Why?
Right.
Yeah.
You're waiting for the phone. We're waiting for the phone to ring. I think wedding groups are a great example. If a wedding group, would pick up the phone and call, and this is a great opportunity for somebody who has a wedding group, because musicians aren't generally built this way, but the wedding venues absolutely are. They're vendors, and they have to deal with all kinds of florists and caterers and musicians and blah blah blah. And most of them are horribly unprofessional. If somebody with a wedding group would call a wedding, venue and go, "Hey, I'd love to take you out to lunch and just, if you have a second, talk to you a little bit about what we do," they'd probably be blown away.
I guarantee that. Yep.
Or God forbid you play a job there, and when it's over, you call the person you dealt with at the job, and instead of telling all your friends that they sucked, you call them afterwards and go, "Hey, I really enjoyed playing there. Is there anything that we could do differently that would make it better next time? And can I buy you lunch and maybe we could talk about it?" And you just before you know it, it's simple. It's not that hard. but the wedding groups that I've been involved in the past haven't done that. And maybe there are that do. I mean, they, again, I'm not.
It's always
I don't
going to be
know.
the rare group that does that. But let's be honest, the majority don't. They just don't.
Right, because we're not trained that way. I mean, if you go to school for, to sell financial products, the first thing they do on your first day at wherever at New York Life is they put you in front of a phone and give you a list of people of prospects, bad prospects probably, and you better start calling them. And if you don't make 300 calls a day, you're not. But who got into music to do that, right? Nobody did. And it's not pure, and it's not organic, and it's not.
I just wanted to play.
I just want to play. I get it.
Well, it's so funny because this is never talked about in school, in lessons. It's only the only thing that's ever talked to you about in school or any lessons is just the actual music, the phrasing, this and that.
Right. Right. I think there at some colleges now, like I know at Curtis, they have kind of a freelancing 101 course, which is taught by a great guy who freelances around Philly, and he's trying to teach them a little bit of the etiquette around it. But by and large, I don't think colleges see that as part of their curriculum. Now, maybe at some of the more advanced places, like maybe at Berkeley and some of the more entrepreneurial schools, they do that. But I think most of the the glamour schools, I call them, are based primarily on making the very best players that they can make, and the measure by which they're measured is whether they win major orchestral auditions. I mean that's, and you don't need any sales skills to win a major orchestral audition, do you? All you need is pure ability. That's all you need. Right. I mean, you may need some social skills and ability and social ability to keep the job once you have it, but
that doesn't get talked about either, though.
but you certainly don't need it to win the job.
You need a class called "How Not to Be an Asshole." I can think of a lot of musicians who should take that class. They spend too much time.
I was one of those. I was one of those musicians that needed that class, and I took it. I just didn't take it. In music school. I took it somewhere else, and I'd like to think it's made me a nicer person and a better person. And there's still people out there that hate my guts because of the way I used to act, and I get that. That's fine. There's nothing I can do. So whatever.
Where did you learn not to be an asshole? Like that
from Keller Williams.
Oh, okay.
I learned that if I'm less of an asshole and nicer to people might actually want to work with me. And in real estate, when they want to work with you, you can actually make money. So it's worth it to be nice.
You make a lot more money than being a musician. I mean,
and then it turns out that being nice kind of relates to being happy, and it's way more fun to be happy, than it is to be pissed off all the time. And I can slip back to the other side. Believe me, it doesn't take that much. And a lot of times, sadly, it has to do with going and playing a job and coming home and being really tired. And I famously will come in the house after playing a concert, and my daughter, who I love more than anything in the world, and she's 15 and she loves musical theater and she sings all the time, and she'll be there and I'll be having my, scotch and kind of recovering, and she's singing something, and I'll literally look up at her and go, "No singing." Horrible thing to say to a 15-year-old who loves, and she just kind of laughs at me, but it's how I feel when I come home from these things. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to crawl into a hole. And,
honey, can you do that tomorrow, please?
That's so funny.
Yeah, sure, that's amazing. It's like a Louis C.K. skit or something. But
all right.
Yeah.
So it's funny. You were just talking about we were talking about how the whole education is just geared towards the result of winning a major orchestra audition, and everything else in between and everyone else in between just, gets ignored in the process, And so I think it makes everyone so obsessed with the result. And I know for me, that's all I was obsessed with getting to that place. And it was my entire life. Yeah. So Do you have any like suggestions for people to enjoy the process more? Because I don't know if that carried over into real estate, but I mean, there's a process, but there's also the big win, which is when you sell and you can
Right.
make your money. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think the process for me is the process in real estate is, connecting with people and asking them questions about what their real estate needs are and trying to help them. I mean, honestly, that's what it is. The process. So I'm not sure what the process is for musicians, but the thing is, you've got to have some goals first before you can even create a process to achieve them.
Right.
If your goal is to win a job, then I would say that your processes have to be around practicing to win jobs. But maybe it's not just practicing hour after hour after hour. That you got, maybe there's other things that you need to add in there. But I think that, how do I put this? If your only goal is to win a job, that seems so narrow to me.
Yeah.
And maybe if you expand your goals and you think about it in terms of not just having that job, but in terms of, well, what would that, so let's play a little game, Tracy. Like, if you won that job, what would that mean to you?
Right.
Like, how would that feel to win that job? Like, what is your big why? What is the big why behind having this job? What would that do for your family if you made $150,000 a year instead of 40?
Right.
What is on your vision board that could come true if you achieved this goal? And now, what some people might find is, I'm taking an audition to be in, insert East Chuckafuck Philharmonic, and I'm gonna fly at my own expense to Des Moines and take this audition. And if I win, the goal of this is winning this job, and it's a per service orchestra, and I will make $7,000 next year. Like, in the process of examining what your goals are beyond just winning the job, like, what is it you want your life to be? What is it you're looking to accomplish?
Right.
Maybe, just saying, there's something, along with playing music that could help you with that,
Well,
and that's
you would have to
people.
think of your life as bigger than a job.
You would have to think of your life as bigger than an orchestral job.
God.
Isn't your life bigger than that?
Can I just tell you?
Even if you're in the Philadelphia Orchestra or the New York Philharmonic, isn't your life bigger than that job? I think so.
I think so too.
I hope so.
Dude, I really wish I could have heard this conversation 20 years ago. I'm not even kidding. I'm totally serious.
Me
it's
too.
like, because what I'm getting from this is, and I've said something along these lines before on other podcasts, but I never thought past the win. I never thought about what happens next, ever. I practically never even thought of what happens after I advance out of the first round,
Right.
Like,
that would be a win.
So many times I advanced and I would be like, well, when I finally did start advancing, I was like, oh shit, now what?
What do
Like,
I do now?
I never planned on the second and third rounds and finals. Like, I don't know how to do those, but, and I never got past the, why am I here? What is this salary going to do for my life? What do I want in my life? My life is bigger than getting a job. Like, what is this going to get for me? I don't know. I never planned it out. I never strategized. I never asked myself those why questions. And it's a huge question. It's so important, And now that I know so much about what I know about the music world and the orchestra world, because I had this job as a per service player, but that was the only job I was playing, when I was here. It was totally different from, living in Chicago, because it's just a different kind of scene here. So I was like the number one call in a place where there were barely any extras, and I was the runner up. So I got to do that consistently. I felt like it was my job, and I learned what that felt like to have a job. And then that was when I started to go, wait a second, I don't know if I want this,
Right.
And then I remember the first time that I went back to sub with the Chicago Symphony after having those solid 10 seasons playing here. it was a totally different experience because I had such a different perspective about what a job was. You know, when I subbed with the Chicago Symphony as a student, as a postgraduate student, I was like stars in my eyes. Like, I can't believe I'm here. I feel like I'm walking in on the red carpet. And they literally do have red carpet. But, you know, I felt like, wow, I'm like in the presence of gods. And then like going back 10 years later, I went in and I'm like, these are people with a job that just happens to be in Chicago. And yeah, they have great world-class conductors and they make more money than the North Carolina Symphony.
And they're the best, and they're probably the best musicians at their, you know,
they're in the top, you know,
they're in the top
1%.
1% or whatever.
But they're still humans who have a job that
And
get
they
paid a
have
certain amount to
problems.
go do that thing. Yeah.
Right. And some of them are happy doing it, and some of them are fucking miserable. And then, you know, and just like any other field,
Yep.
right? You know, I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of people in major orchestras that would listen to this and just be like, this just doesn't apply to me.
Right.
You know, and that's fine. It isn't about the people who have major jobs. This conversation is not about them.
Right.
It really isn't, right? Like if you've gotten there, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe that's not true. I mean, maybe you get there and you go, wow, this sucks. You know, I mean, I don't want to do this.
There are people, I know a handful of people who've gotten there and then said, you know, I want to do something else. And the whole world goes, you're going to quit the Chicago Symphony? Are you insane?
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, I had a hard time. I resigned from an orchestra this year that a regional orchestra, and you know, I had auditioned for it, and it was so hard to do. I can't believe how hard it was, and you know, I can't even imagine what it would take to quit something like that you've worked, you know, your whole life for. I mean, that's the thing is, at this point, by the time you get into your 30s and 40s as a musician, think how much we have vested in this. You know, like we've been doing this since we were 10 or 5 or whatever, right? You know, and our parents probably sacrificed or at least spent money on all of this stuff. And there's all this. I mean, you've got to be superhuman if you're not carrying around some baggage about that. I mean, who isn't, right? I mean, I know I am. Like, oh my God, my mom drove me to these lessons. She paid, and she didn't have much money, but she paid for them. And then mom, you know, and I can't quit now because, you know, I have to make it. I have to get a job, you know. And, you know, and in a way, my musical education did work. Like, I'm a successful person. You know, so it's not like it can't be successful. It's just, I guess the idea, if there are young people listening, I guess the idea is keep an open mind, you know, that there might be something other than this one path, you know, and that, you know, and that, I guess that's really it. I mean, I think that's kind of the moral of the story, right?
Right, right. Totally. Well, you know, just to summarize what we've been talking about, we've been talking just so much about money and point of view, and I just want to hear what you think about, you know, classical musicians totally equate creativity and the job market, and we've just really kind of pinpointed that it's about money, not creativity.
When you're talking about money, yes, it has.
Right. Well, it becomes about money when you're talking about your life. You're navigating your life, so it pays to be strategic about it, and you can still have, you know, your thoughts about creativity, and you can be creative. But this is necessary. This is a necessary conversation. So, yeah.
But is this what I sometimes refer to as the Charlie Parker syndrome? That if you're not dirt broke and high on heroin, you can't possibly be creating art. You know, like you know, I think that I had a little bit of that in my DNA when I was younger, and I think that there's a certain amount of that in the arts that you have to suffer financially. Otherwise, you're not really creating art.
Yeah.
You know, and this does not exist in any other endeavor in the world, by the way, right? It doesn't even exist in commercial music. Certainly doesn't exist in commercial music.
Oh, I know.
Doesn't exist in sports. It doesn't exist in medicine. It doesn't exist in the law. It doesn't. I mean, I'm struggling to come up with other, respected fields. It doesn't exist in architecture. It doesn't exist in development. Doesn't exist in city planners. Only in a certain segment of music and
probably
visual
some writers
arts.
too.
There's writers. Okay, writers. I think, and I don't want to again speak for myself. This is an attitude that I had, that in order to really make art, the money dirties the art.
Right.
But the reality is that the lack of money dirties the art in exactly the way that you don't want the art to get dirtied. That's the sad thing, is that you don't want the money to dirty the art, but you have no money, so the art becomes about how much money I need to make more money. I got to get this gig because I have no money, right? Suddenly the art is about the money, and now it's all screwed up. Now it's all like jumbled together.
Yep.
Maybe that's where the heroin comes in, but I'm just joking about that. I mean, Charlie Parker was a great artist, right? And a heroin addict, but
no, that's so funny because I didn't even know that. I didn't even.
I might be wrong about that, by the way. That could be completely wrong. I have no idea. I'm not an expert on Charlie Parker's life, so if I'm wrong about that, podcast world, I apologize. I mean, Jimi Hendrix, another. The world is filled with great artists who destroyed themselves with drugs. It's kind of a symptom of that. It's a little bit of the same kind of thinking, right? I don't deserve to be alive, so I'm just going to, blow myself up or whatever. But anyway, I don't know. I think I may be.
I don't know. I think it's a self-loathing thing, though. I think it's self-loathing.
It's a self-loathing thing. That's right. Right. You can't. You have to have this self-loathing and this kind of understanding of pain in order to really create.
Yeah, and people do it with their money. They go, "I'm going to create pain around money so that I can loathe it." So I can, you know what I mean?
Right.
You can create it about anything, but they just create it about money. That's a choice.
Yeah,
it totally is.
It's difficult our society is very difficult to live in without money. I mean, I think, there are places in the world where you could go and be a musician that really wouldn't matter how much money you make. I don't know. But in America, it's pretty hard to exist without a certain amount of money, unless you're sort of wired to not need it. And most of us, myself anyway, I'm not really wired that way. I want to have some things, and I want to provide for my family. It gives me I can't even express what a great joy it is to me to be able to, fill in the blank, take my son and everybody who's coming to his graduation out to a big meal tomorrow night and be able to just drop, my Visa card down and go, that's no problem, whatever it is, and not be concerned about what that bill is going to be. And, for the first 40 years of my life, I didn't have that experience. And it feels great to be able to provide in that way. I mean that so sincerely. And I've worked so hard to get there. And, anybody can do it. I mean, it's a mindset. It's more mindset than anything. I think that's my, if you start believing that you can be successful and you can define what that means to you, then you can have it. Anybody can. I think there's one, I don't know how long you want to go, but I have one more thing I think I forgot to talk about, which is I think this happens in the music world. Like, if I don't get called for fill in the blank gig, right? If I do get called for that job, that means somebody else didn't get it. So this is the idea of abundance and lack, right? Like, if I'm successful and I have an abundance of love and money and happiness in my life, I'm not taking those things away from somebody else. There's plenty of it in the universe. There's plenty of it for you, Eileen, and for you, Tracy, and for whoever wants it. If I win the job and I'm the cellist and somebody else didn't get it, that somebody else, should say, hey, congratulations. Not fuck you. I can't believe he beat me. He sucks. Have you ever sat with him? Oh my God. but that's what what tends to happen. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I have found in the real estate world. I mean, and there are exceptions, of course, but most of the time we're all trying to help each other. I know that sounds crazy, but we're all trying to help each other. I spent 3 hours yesterday in our market center in our office teaching a group of new agents what I do and how to do it so that they can be successful too. And am I worried that they're going to steal my secrets and take my clients? I'm not. That's I want them to be successful. It's good.
This is a concept of helping other people win,
Helping other people win.
Eileen
Do we
talks
do
about
that?
this.
I mean, there are people who do that. Like when I was taking auditions, there were people that helped me. And I think there is a lot of that happens. And so I shouldn't sell that short, but I think we could help each other more. I really do.
Yeah.
Musicians could. I think we could be more supportive of each other.
Absolutely.
In the lower ranks, especially.
I think this is such a I was going to say wealthy topic, but it is a huge topic, and it's really great to have you on, John. I just see I see the possibility of having more parts to this because it's just so great what you're bringing to the table with your perspective of money as a musician who's doing extra things and still playing. So I really appreciate your insights on all of this.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been it was a little scary, but I'm glad to have been a part of it, and I'm happy to help any way I can. And by the way, if anybody listens, do people listen to this, Tracy?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just kidding. That was a joke. If anybody wants to contact me and talk further, I'm totally open to that, and I'm sure my contact information will be there.
Okay, I'll put your personal phone number in the show notes with your personal. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, if anybody in the Philadelphia or Pennsylvania area has a home that they'd like to sell in the next 30 days, I would love to hear from them as well, of course.
Yes. Gotta give John a plug.
Please do. Please check out my website.
Always be selling ABS.
No, ABC, always be closing. Always be closing. That's from Glengarry. Yeah, the famous play, which is awesome. Put the coffee down. Right. Coffee is for closers.
Yeah, totally.
Coffee.
All right. Well, listen, this was a ball.
This was great. Thank you so much, John. Thanks, Eileen. And if you're enjoying Crushing Classical, go ahead and write a review on iTunes and join the conversation at facebook.com/crushingclassical and Instagram at Crushing Classical. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.